Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today we have an episode of Commander's 2 Cents. On episodes like these, I give you my own personal take on topics about the format in general and current news. This show and episodes like this one are possible because of viewers like you. So if you're looking for some easy ways to help support the show, make sure you like this episode and share it with friends. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Thank you to everyone who's already purchased our merchandise, it really does help support the channel. Another easy way to support this channel is by using our TCG Player affiliate links. So make sure that you're looking for those links in the description whenever you're buying a deck or just individual cards. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today we're going to tackle some of the most powerful commanders that you can build on a budget. Now keep in mind that what makes a commander powerful is pretty much going to be a universal thing. What I mean by that is that these commanders can be powerful no matter what their budget is. With these commanders I'm going to mention though, you've got access to a ton of budget cards that work really well with them. Now there are many different factors that make certain commanders powerful, and we're going to try to tackle them one at a time. There are more than just these factors that I'm going to bring up, but I'm going to try to bucket them as well as I can. So the first bucket we're going to tackle today is commanders that generate absurd card advantage. In Commander, drawing cards is a very powerful thing. The more cards that you have than your opponents, the more options than them that you have. So if your commander can guarantee card advantage, it's going to put you way ahead. The first commander that comes to mind in this category is Joriwa Weatherlight Captain. She's a 3/3 human artificer that costs 2 blue-red, and she has whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card. While legendaries and sagas might not be the easiest things to cast, artifacts definitely are. So this deck's going to be running a ton of mana rocks since they cantrip whenever we cast them. But some more impactful cards are going to be ones that actually reduce the cost of our artifacts like Foundry and Spectre. By making all of our artifacts free to cast, we can churn through our deck in no time. And some of the most impactful cards in this deck are actually some of the cheapest ones like Guild Globe. It's a simple 2 mana artifact, and when it comes into play, you draw a card. So on top of our commander giving us a card when we cast this, we're getting one from this too. And then we can cast things like Rebuild to return all those artifacts back to our hand and recast them again and again and again. Commanders that say draw on them immediately have my attention. Joriwa is an especially powerful one in budget because there are a ton of cheap artifacts out there. Let's move on to our next commander though with the Gitrog monster. It's a 6/6 frog horror that has death touch and it costs 3 black-green. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Gitrog monster. Unless you sacrifice a land, you may play an additional land on each of your turns, and whenever one or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. So as long as you have a land in your hand, it's going to draw you an extra card and replace that land. But the most important part of that draw effect is that it happens whenever a land hits the graveyard from anywhere. So if you mill a land into your graveyard or you discard a land, you still get to draw. So there are plenty of ways to easily abuse this effect and to draw a ton of cards. Dredge cards like Golgari Grave Troll are fantastic in this deck. It has Dredge 6, and that essentially means that if you would draw a card, instead you can put exactly 6 cards in the top of your library into your graveyard, and if you do, you return this card from your graveyard to your hand, otherwise you draw a card. Out of the top 6 cards of your library, you're pretty much guaranteed to hit a land. So with this kind of effect, you're going to be drawing more cards and digging through your deck. And this deck is especially effective with discard outlets like Putrid Imp. You can use it to get your Dredge cards back into your graveyard on top of using it to discard lands. And Dakmor Salvage is actually a land that has Dredge. With a discard outlet and this in your hand, you can churn through your entire deck. This makes Gitrog an extremely powerful combo commander. If you want to see how that combo works though, go check out my deck tech on the Gitrog monster. But for now, let's move on to our next commander with Yawgmoth Thran Physician. Yawgmoth is a 2/4 human cleric with protection from humans, and he costs 2 black-black. He has pay 1 life, sacrifice another creature, put a -1/-1 counter on up to 1 target creature, and draw a card. And then black-black, discard a card, proliferate. Now, Yawgmoth is powerful for many reasons. He can help you control the board, but most importantly, he can turn your creatures into card draw. And this effect is essentially free since it costs no mana and it just costs 1 life each time you do it. So even a simple card like Weaponcraft Enthusiast is basically a pay 3 life, draw 3 cards, and put 3 -1/-1 counters on creatures. And creatures like Butcher Ghoul with Undying are especially good with Yawgmoth. When Butcher Ghoul dies, it's going to come back with a +1/+1 counter on it, and you can negate that counter with a -1/-1 counter. Now you have to sacrifice another creature to do so, but if that creature has Undying too, you can just loot both of them. And a true all-star with Yawgmoth is Nest of Scarabs. It says whenever you put 1 or more -1/-1 counters on a creature, create that many 1/1 black insect creature tokens. So with this, you can essentially wipe the board and draw a ton of cards. Yawgmoth is fantastic in Aristocrat style strategy because he's a sacrifice outlet and a draw engine. He can give you a ton of card advantage on top of helping you control the board. Next up, there's a commander that I think is very underrated with Shram Senior Edificer. He's a 2/2 dwarf advisor that costs 1 and a white, and he says whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. So you can take this commander in a lot of different directions. Now, many people are hesitant to build around mono white commanders because white is definitely considered to be the weakest color in Commander. Now, the reason for this is that white is pretty weak when it comes to card draw and ramping, and both of those things are crucial in Commander. But with the Shram deck, you're going to be very low to the ground, so you really don't have to ramp. And on top of that, Shram is going to draw you an absurd amount of cards. You can build a deck that's similar to Joyride where you're trying to storm off with equipment. You can also just go for a straight-up Voltron style strategy too. White has access to a ton of cheap and efficient auras, so I built my deck around them. Cards like Ethereal Armor can pump your commander very quickly. And then a card like Mask of Law and Grace is a fantastic way to protect Shram and also help get him through. This style of deck also focused on controlling the board with pacifism type effects. So while you're creating the biggest threat in the board, you're also dealing with your opponent's threats too. It's pretty unheard of for a mono white deck to have to discard down to hand size, but there are plenty of times that you have to do that with this deck. But now let's move on from our mono white commander into a Boros commander with Feather the Redeemed. Boros has been considered by many to be the weakest color combination in commander for a long time. Again, that goes back into the lack of great options when it comes to card draw and ramp. But like Shram for Feather, ramping really isn't that important, and she's going to provide you a ton of card advantage in a non-traditional way, but it's very effective. Feather the Redeemed is a 3/4 flying angel that costs red, white, white. She says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature you control, exile that card instead of putting it into your graveyard as it resolves. If you do, return to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So while she doesn't technically draw you cards, she gives you the cards back that you're casting that target your creatures. So you're not going to be losing the cards that you're casting, so that's very much card advantage. So in this deck, you're going to be running a ton of cheap cards that target. Cantrips like Expedite are fantastic ones because not only do you get to draw a card, but you're also getting Expedite back. This is a very cheap and effective, repeatable way that you can dig through your deck. And then if you're running a Voltron build, something like Titan Strength can come in huge. Not only does it pump Feather, but it's also going to let you scry 1. This in combination with other pump effects, especially ones that give double strike, can make Feather into a 1 or 2 shot kill. And you're also going to be running a lot of cheap things that protect Feather like Sheltering Light. Just having to pay 1 mana for indestructibility each turn and getting to scry 1 when you do so is huge. So even though her effect isn't traditional card advantage like the other commanders that we've mentioned, her effect is still very powerful all the same. Another commander that deals with non-traditional card advantage is Elsha of the Infinite. She's a 3/3 Djinn monk with prowess and costs 2 blue, red, white. She has you may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may cast the top card of your library if it's a non-creature, non-land card, and you may cast it as though it had flash. So while she doesn't actually draw you any cards, she actually is kind of extending your hand to include the top card of your library. Now if that card's a creature or land, it's not going to do anything for you. But if it's a non-creature or non-land, you can cast it at instant speed. So like Jhoira, Elsha can be extremely powerful when you build around artifacts. And if you're able to control the top of your library, you essentially always have a card to play. So cheap artifacts like Codex Shredder and Pyxis of Pandemonium are going to be huge. If the top card of your library is a creature or a land, simply get rid of it with one of these. When you can get a non-creature, non-land on top, you're essentially just drawing a card. This deck's also going to want ways to reduce the cost of artifacts like Semblance Anvil. By reducing their cost to nothing, you can easily churn through your deck and storm off. So again, card advantage can come in multiple forms. Your commander doesn't actually have to have the word draw in it to provide you with card advantage. Another example of this comes from Muldrotha the Gravetide. Muldrotha is a 6/6 elemental avatar that costs 3 black, green, blue. She has during each of your turns, you may play up to 1 permanent card of each permanent type from your graveyard. So again, this commander does not say the word draw on it anywhere, but she basically turns your graveyard into a secondary hand, and that in itself is a ton of card advantage. Now she only lets you play permanents out of your graveyard, but still it's a ton of cards to choose from, and there are plenty of permanents that let you abuse this effect too. When you have access to Secure Tribe Elder, it's essentially a 2 mana ramp spell each turn. By casting it and sacrificing it again and again and again, you can just get way ahead on your opponents on lands. With all that mana that you're getting, you can also continuously control the board with something like Pernicious Deed. You can pay X into it and sacrifice it to destroy each artifact, creature, and enchantment with converted mana cost X or less. So you're going to be destroying your opponent's things, and you can also just get your things back if you need to. Muldrotha also works fantastically with self-mill. So something like Mirror-Mad Phantasm is an incredible card in this deck. By paying 1 in a blue, you shuffle it into your library. Then you reveal cards from the top of your library until Mirror-Mad Phantasm is revealed. Mirror-Mad Phantasm comes back onto the battlefield, and all the other cards that you revealed go into your graveyard. Again, remember that your graveyard is essentially a second hand. So if you happen to mill 50 or so cards with this, you're basically just drawing 50 cards. Now there definitely is a difference because you can only cast 1 permanent of each type each turn. But still, in a deck like this, you're going to have a ton of options. The final commander in this bucket that I'm going to tackle today is Kenneth the Returned King, or as I like to call him, Kenny. Kenny has very quickly become one of my personal favorite commanders of all time. Kenny is a 5/5 human noble that costs 4 and a white. And he's got a ton of abilities, so here we go. Red, all creatures gain trample and haste until end of turn. 1 in a green, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. 2 in a white, target player gains 5 life. 3 in a blue, target player draws a card. And 4 in a black, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under its owner's control. So Kenny does a lot of things, and you can take him in a ton of different directions. One direction that you can take him is combo, because if you have infinite mana, you can just win right away. But the direction that I found to be still very powerful and a lot of fun was a politics deck. Kenny has a ton of abilities, and you can use those to wheel and deal. And it might not seem like it, but the amount of card advantage that Kenny can generate for you is huge. At first, it may only seem like the way to generate card advantage with this commander is his 4th ability, which is to pay 3 in a blue to draw a card. Now, 4 mana for 1 card is not a good rate. But if you look further, there are other ways to generate card advantage too. Much like Muldrotha, you can use Kenny to get creatures back. So your graveyard is also going to be a resource in this deck. But you can even turn that +1/+1 counter ability into card advantage too. You can do this with something like Fathom Mage that says whenever a +1/+1 counter is put on Fathom Mage, you may draw a card. So now it's just going to be 2 mana for you to draw a card, and you get to grow your Fathom Mage. While you're doing this, you can protect yourself with some recurable effects like Spore Frog. And 5 mana to fog each turn isn't bad, but it could be a little better. And that's why Biomancer's Familiar is an incredible card in this deck. It says activated abilities of creatures you control cost 2 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the amount of mana and ability cost to activate to less than 1 mana. So now Kenrith's first 3 abilities are going to cost 1 mana each. His draw card ability now only costs 2 and his reanimate ability costs 3. So again, if you've got both Fathom Mage and Biomancer's Familiar out, it's only going to cost a green to draw a card. Once you're set up, the amount of card advantage that you can generate with this deck is absolutely absurd. When it comes to commanders that generate absurd card advantage, sometimes there are some really obvious ones and other times there aren't. Many commanders that draw you a card whenever something happens are very powerful. But like I showed you, there are plenty of commanders out there that don't do that and still generate an absurd amount of card advantage for you. So I highly encourage you to think outside the box when it comes to card advantage. And outside of card advantage, there are plenty of things that make a commander powerful, but we'll tackle those on later episodes. And make sure that you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Links to our social media accounts can be found in the description. Also in the description below is a link to the Commander's Quarters Patreon page, and I just want to say a quick thank you to the patrons who have subscribed so far. There are many benefits to being a patron for the Commander's Quarters, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There's even a general level tier where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. I truly couldn't do this without all of your support, so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.